You work incredibly hard. I mean, you master your craft. You become the absolute go-to person on your team.
Right, the person everyone relies on.
Exactly. You're so undeniably good at your job that you get promoted. And then, because you just completely crush that role, you get promoted again.
Yep, the classic success story.
But then suddenly, like, without any warning, the exact same skills and the exact same work ethic that made you so successful, well, they become your biggest liability.
It's terrifying, honestly.
It really is. You find yourself drowning, and the scariest part is that doing the very things that used to save you is only making you sink faster.
It's such a jarring realization for any high performer. Because, your natural instinct, which you've honed over years of your career, is that when you're struggling at work, you simply need to work harder.
Right, you just put your head down.
Exactly. You lean into what you know. But in this specific organizational scenario, working harder is actually the poison. It's not the cure.
So today we are dissecting a phenomenon that organizational experts call the second promotion trap.
A very real, very dangerous trap.
Yeah. And to do this, we're using a really fascinating case study today called Leading Leaders, the Center Director's Pipeline Transition.
It's a great piece.
It is. The subject is a professional named Emma, and she's an early childhood education director. But look, whether you are listening to this on your commute to a tech startup or a corporate finance firm or, I don't know, a retail chain, Emma's story is the universal blueprint.
Oh, 100%.
It shows exactly what happens when you transition from managing frontline workers to managing the people who manage those workers. Okay, let's unpack this. We are going to explore this critical pivot, right? And we're going to uncover why working harder is often the absolute worst thing a new director can do.
And I think it's important to validate that so many of you listening have probably experienced this exact phenomenon. Because that distinction you just mentioned, managing the managers, that is the entire ballgame.
Yeah, it changes everything.
It does, because the first promotion usually involves moving from doing the work to managing the people doing the work. That's a shift, sure, but you're still adjacent to the daily output.
You still see the immediate results.
Right, but that second promotion, that requires a profound identity shift. You have to transition from developing great employees to developing the leaders who will eventually develop those employees.
Which is a huge leap.
It's an entirely different psychological game, and it requires a completely different set of tools.
And from the outside, it can look like you have it all figured out, right? While internally, the wheels are just completely coming off.
Yep, the swan gliding on the water while paddling furiously underneath.
Exactly. And that's exactly where we find Emma in the case study. So for 2 years, she was this superstar assistant center director. She's the ultimate team player. If a classroom was short-staffed, boom, she jumped in.
Always to the rescue.
Always. If parents were unhappy, she solved the problem on the fly. So naturally, she gets promoted to the top job, center director.
Makes sense.
Right. And 6 months later, she has a full staff. She has great room leaders. She even has her own assistant director. On paper, the center is functioning beautifully. But Emma is absolutely miserable.
Well, yeah, because she has unintentionally engineered herself into a bottleneck.
A massive bottleneck.
She is attending every single parent meeting. She's personally reviewing every staff schedule, approving every minor purchase. I mean, the organization is only functioning because Emma is working herself to the bone.
Yeah, she essentially made herself the central processing unit for the entire building.
That's the perfect way to look at it. She's a single-core CPU trying to run an enterprise-level operating system.
Every single piece of data, no matter how trivial, has to run through her to be validated before the system can move forward.
And, as we know, a single CPU can only process so much before the whole machine overheats and crashes. To scale an organization, you really need a distributed network. You need multiple processors handling their own data sets independently.
Yes, and there is a moment in the text that captures the exact moment this overheating happens for Emma. It's the, well, I call it the supply bin epiphany.
Oh, this part is so relatable.
It is. So Emma is walking through the center one afternoon, and she sees a preschool room leader walk right past 3 completely overflowing, messy supply bins.
Just walks right by.
Just ignores them. And a few minutes later, Emma watches her own assistant director walk by, see the exact same messy bins, and just stand there. Waiting for Emma to come back. So frustrated, Emma just rolls up her sleeves, organizes the supplies herself, and later she vents to her regional director asking, why doesn't anyone take ownership anymore?
Which is a question echoing through corporate hallways everywhere, by the way.
But I want to push back on this for a second. I want to challenge Emma's perspective here because, wait, Isn't Emma just being a good team player here?
How do you mean?
Well, think about a restaurant manager. If you're managing a busy kitchen, the dinner rush hits and you're down a line cook, a good boss jumps on the grill. Shouldn't a good boss be willing to get their hands dirty and not just point fingers from some ivory tower?
See, that instinct right there, that is exactly why the second promotion trap is so insidious. What's fascinating here is how the regional director in the case study dismantles that assumption.
He really does.
It's brilliant. He listens to Emma vent about the bins and simply says, they are taking ownership.
Which confuses her.
Totally. When Emma pushes back, confused about how ignoring a mess equals ownership, the regional director delivers this brutal truth. He says, they're taking ownership of bringing problems to you.
Oof. That reframes the entire dynamic. It means the staff isn't lazy. They are highly trained.
Precisely. They are executing the exact protocol Emma unknowingly trained them to follow.
Right, by constantly jumping in.
Yes, by constantly fixing the schedule, by reorganizing the bins herself. She conditioned her entire staff to believe that every important organizational task ultimately belongs to her.
She thought she was being a servant leader.
Exactly, but the mechanism she was actually employing was creating learned helplessness. By solving their problems, she robbed them of the friction they needed to develop their own critical thinking.
Wow. And the text actually distills this into a quote that I think anchors this whole deep dive. It says, managers create employees, directors create managers.
It's so powerful because if Emma is the one organizing the supply bins, she isn't just wasting her own time. She is actively stealing a developmental opportunity from her assistant director.
Yeah, her success isn't about how clean the center is today.
No, it's measured by how effectively her leadership team ensures the center is clean tomorrow and next week.
But once that realization lands, though, the panic sets in. Because, like, knowing you need to stop acting like a single CPU is one thing. Actually rewiring the motherboard is another
It's
entirely...
a mechanical shift.
Right. And the source material outlines that escaping this trap requires a total teardown of two critical mechanics.
Yeah.
Skills and time application.
And the absolute clearest window into a leader's skill level is how they run a meeting. I mean, meetings expose your true operating system.
Oh, Emma's operating system during her Monday leadership meetings was incredibly revealing.
Painfully so.
She would sit in a room for 2 hours while her team threw rapid-fire questions at her. What should we do about the staffing shortage on Thursday? Emma gave the answer. What supplies should we order for next month? Emma gave the answer.
Just serving up solutions.
Right. And the case study notes that nobody left those meetings thinking. Everyone left waiting. Just waiting for the next instruction.
Which brings us back to that distributed network idea. She is forcing all the data back through her own processor.
Yeah. It's like, okay, taking the sports analogy, It's like someone who gets hired to be the head coach, but they refuse to take off their helmet. They're standing on the field, insisting on throwing every pass themselves, when their actual job is to be up in the booth, reading the opposing defense, and trusting the coordinators they trained to call the plays.
That is a great analogy.
Yeah.
And that transition from throwing passes to reading the defense, it requires a fundamental shift in daily conversational skills. Specifically, you have to shift from problem solving to coaching.
Which is really hard.
It is. After observing one of these Monday meetings, the regional director asks Emma, how many leadership decisions did your team make today? And she had to admit they made none.
Zero.
Zero. She made all of them. So the mechanical fix here is learning to suppress the physical urge to provide the answer.
Which is agonizing. I mean, if an employee asks you how to fix a scheduling conflict and you know the exact answer, it takes 5 seconds to just tell them.
Sure, it takes 5 seconds to tell them, but it might take 5 minutes of awkward silence to coach them to the answer. The psychology of stepping back requires enduring that friction. In the next meeting, when someone asks a question, Emma has to force herself to reply with a question, like, what options have you considered? Or what would success look like in this scenario?
It feels painfully slow in the short term, doesn't it?
It does. But by forcing her team to endure the cognitive load of finding the solution, she is building their leadership muscles.
Yeah. But fixing the meetings and changing the conversational dynamic is only half the battle. Because even if you start asking the right questions, you still have to figure out what to do with a suddenly open calendar.
This is where time application comes in.
Exactly, the second mechanical change. The case study presents this side-by-side comparison of Emma's old calendar versus the ideal center director calendar, and wow, the contrast is staggering.
Her old calendar was built entirely for the present tense. It was just a reactive schedule filled with covering breaks, handling daily operational fires, dealing with immediate parent complaints.
Right, directly coaching frontline educators.
Yeah, all present-day stuff.
But her new calendar has to be built for the future tense. It's dedicated to one-on-one development sessions with her leadership team. Strategic planning, budgeting, succession planning.
The big picture.
Right. The source actually breaks down the ideal time allocation for this level of leadership. And the math might shock anyone who's currently stuck in the trap. Listen to this. 30% of her time should be spent developing her direct reports, so the assistant director and room leaders.
Yep.
20% on strategic planning, 15% on business performance and enrollment, 10% on parent relationships, 10% on financial management, 10% on staff engagement. And right at the bottom, only 5% on crisis management.
That 5% metric is usually where high achievers balk. They just can't believe it.
I mean, most new directors are spending 80% of their day on crisis management.
Oh, easily, because crisis management is intoxicating.
It really is.
It provides an immediate dopamine hit. You swoop in, you fix the broken schedule, you placate the angry client, you save the day.
You feel like a superhero.
You feel essential. But to drop that down to 5% requires letting go of the need to be the hero. It means accepting that your assistant director might handle a minor crisis differently or perhaps even slightly worse than you would in the short term.
Right.
Specifically so they can learn to handle it flawlessly in the long term.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because this highlights the deepest, most difficult layer of the entire pipeline transition. We can talk about rearranging a calendar or practicing open-ended questions all day.
Sure.
But those are just mechanical levers.
Yeah.
None of those levers will budge if the underlying the actual values of the leader doesn't change.
Absolutely. It's a complete rewiring of professional self-worth. You're basically asking someone to fundamentally abandon the metrics that historically proved they were good at their job.
Exactly. I mean, as an assistant director, Emma's values were tangible and they were immediate. She valued having one absolutely perfect showcase classroom. She valued fast problem solving. If a child was crying, she comforted them. If a staff member was confused, she guided them. It was a localized, instant gratification model of success. But as a center director, her values must shift from managing a localized project to managing an entire ecosystem.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, her new core value has to be leadership bench strength.
Bench strength, I love that term.
It's crucial. She has to care more about the expanding capability of her team than she does about any single operational outcome on a random Tuesday afternoon. She has to value creating consistency across every classroom, which means trusting other people to maintain this standard.
And this ties directly into how organizational culture is actually built. You know, we often think culture is established through like a great speech at an all-hands meeting or a new company mission statement on the wall.
Right, but culture is actually established by the behaviors leaders consistently model and tolerate. If Emma constantly swoops in to save the day, she isn't just solving a problem, she is actively modeling a culture of dependency. She is broadcasting to her staff, "You are not capable of operating without me."
Exactly.
But by shifting her values toward long-term capability building, she shifts the culture toward autonomy. The central question changes from how do we survive today's shift to what kind of operational machine are we building for the next 3 years?
And to measure whether that mindset shift is actually taking hold, the text provides a brilliant litmus test. The ultimate question a leader in this position has to ask themselves is this: if I promoted my assistant director tomorrow, would this organization still thrive?
And if the honest answer is no, then it doesn't matter how smooth today's daily operations are.
Right.
If the organization falls apart the minute the leader or their direct report leaves, that leader has failed at their primary objective, which is organizational design. They haven't built a robust system, they've just built a fragile house of cards that's entirely reliant on their own heroics.
So we've broken down the trap, the shift in daily mechanics, and the psychological rewiring required to escape it. But the source material doesn't just leave us with theory, which I appreciate.
Yes, the practical application is key.
It provides a real-world climax to Emma's story that proves this methodology actually works. And it's followed by a highly practical 6-month blueprint. So let's look at the payoff first. It's a Friday afternoon. Emma decides to leave work early to attend her daughter's school event.
Which, for the old Emma, would have been an exercise in sheer anxiety.
Oh, she would have been checking her phone every 10 minutes just waiting for the inevitable disaster. And the disaster does happen. While she's gone, an unexpected licensing inspector arrives at the center.
Wow.
Simultaneously, 2 staff members call in sick, and a parent comes in with an escalated complaint. It is the perfect operational storm.
Oh.
But Emma is at her daughter's event, completely unaware. She doesn't intervene. When she returns on Monday morning, she braces herself and asks her assistant director for the damage report.
And this is the moment the distributed network proves its worth.
Yes. The assistant director simply smiles and says, "We had it covered." The assistant director handled the licensing inspector. A room leader stepped up to de-escalate the parent complaint. Another leader dynamically reorganized the staffing to cover the sick calls.
That's incredible.
The center no longer depended on Emma's physical presence to function. It depended entirely on the capability building she had been investing in for months.
She crossed the leadership pipeline. She mastered the second promotion by creating a self-sustaining ecosystem.
So how does a listener actually replicate that success? Because whether you're running a daycare, a software development team, or a retail branch, the case study provides a 6-month blueprint to rebuild your organizational machine. Let's translate this into actionable steps for everyone. Month 1 is categorized as stop and start.
This is the immediate triage phase. So in month 1, you have to stop running every meeting. You literally assign the agenda and the facilitation of your team meetings to someone else.
Let's hand it over.
You stop being the approval point for every minor decision. Instead, you start implementing weekly, dedicated coaching sessions with your direct reports.
And we should clarify what those coaching sessions actually look like, because this isn't a weekly status update where they just read you a list of tasks they completed.
No.
This is a developmental conversation where you set clear boundaries. If you're a sales director, you might say to your regional manager, "You now own the entire client onboarding process. You only need to escalate to me if a contract exceeds $50,000. You are explicitly defining the sandbox they are allowed to play in.
Exactly. And month 2 builds on that by establishing operational routines. The most critical routine introduced here is the quarterly talent review.
Oh, this is so important.
It is. This is where you sit down, look at your direct reports, and evaluate not just their current performance, but their future potential. Who is showing the aptitude to step into your role? Who is struggling with the new autonomy? You are mapping the bench strength of your organization.
Which perfectly sets up month 3, the stretch phase. This is where the real growth happens, and honestly, where the leader's anxiety will probably peak.
Definitely.
You identify those high-potential employees from your talent review, and you give them stretch opportunities. In Emma's case, it meant letting an educator manage a massive licensing readiness project. If you're listening in the tech world, this might mean letting your junior developer lead a crucial sprint review with stakeholders. Or if you're in retail, it might mean letting a shift supervisor handle the quarterly vendor negotiations.
And the psychology of the stretch assignment is critical here. It has to be slightly uncomfortable for the employee. It has to push them beyond their current capability.
Right.
And it has to be terrifying for you, the leader, because you have to sit on the sidelines and watch them potentially stumble. You provide a safety net, but you do not grab the steering wheel.
It's so hard to do, but so necessary.
Yeah.
Finally, months 4 through 6 are entirely about strengthening the system. You are shifting permanently from people management to systems management.
Right, locking it in.
You're building standardized onboarding processes so that new hires are trained consistently, regardless of who is actually training them.
Yeah.
You are creating leadership scorecards.
And a leadership scorecard doesn't track tasks. It tracks capabilities. It measures how many internal promotions your team has generated or how effectively your managers are conducting their own one-on-one sessions. You are codifying the culture of development into the actual architecture of the business.
It is a profound mindset shift. You are moving from the belief that I am responsible for today's operations to the undeniable truth that I am responsible for this organization's future capability.
That is the essence of mature leadership. You know, we have this romanticized notion in business that the best leader is the most important person in the room.
Yeah, the genius with 1,000 helpers.
Exactly. The visionary with all the answers holding the entire fragile operation together through sheer force of will. But true organizational design tells us the exact opposite. This raises an important question about succession planning. A true leader builds a machine that does not need them to run. They design an organization so capable, so empowered, and so relentlessly well coached that the leader's physical presence on any given day becomes a bonus, not a requirement.
So what does this all mean? It brings us right back to that frustrating paradox we started with. You work so incredibly hard to become essential to your company. You build your entire identity around being the person everyone relies on. But if a leader's true value is ultimately measured by how flawlessly a team operates in their absence, does that mean the ultimate, highest goal of any truly great leader is to successfully make themselves completely obsolete?
It's a heavy thought.
It is a heavy, counterintuitive thought to mull over the next time you feel the overwhelming urge to jump in and solve a problem for your team. Take a hard look at your calendar this week. Look at how you run your meetings. Ask yourself the tough question. Are you building leaders, or are you just building a very loyal team of assistants? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.